B-Rob is going to be our first must-start for Week 7. After a hot start, it's been tougher sledding for Brian Robinson the last couple of weeks. He hasn't gone over 45 yards rushing in the last 3 weeks looking at his game log. The Falcons and Eagles were two of the best run defenses in the NFL this year. And the Bears and the Bills games were games that the Commanders found themselves down, and then they started passing the ball a lot. I mean, that's just how it works. The big halftime deficits led to them passing the ball. B-Rob got less work. His production has been down in fantasy. But the next game should be neither of those things, because the Giants have allowed the third most rushing yards, the third most rushing touchdowns, and the 8th highest fantasy points to running backs so far this season. So with B-Rob, I mean, I think all of us knew, though, that what he did at the beginning of the season probably wasn't going to be what he did for the rest of the season.
Right.
However, now looking at B-Rob again, the Giants offense, to be kind, is struggling, so the Commanders should be able to stay in this game and keep running the ball. So the matchup is better because, again, number one, you don't have a super tough rushing defense. You don't have a game where they're probably going to get down big. So we predict, and honestly, Antonio Gibson's not really been a threat there. We predict that Brian Robinson will get carries for pretty much the whole game. And when he does, we predict that he's going to produce this week. So he's going to be our first must start for the week.
Yeah, and we also love running backs matched up against the Green Bay Packers defense. And when you're looking at Josh Jacobs' struggles over the first 6 games of the season, one of his better games came playing against the Green Bay Packers. And Javonte Williams is that running back this week for the Denver Broncos going up against Green Bay. And he's had a rough start this week, or this season, man, to his fantasy production. Barely enough volume, no touchdowns, and an injury, that hip flexor in the middle. But he is going to be our second must start this week for Week 7 because of that matchup against Joe Barry's defense. This has the potential to be a breakout game for Javonte. The Packers have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs around the Cardinals and the Chicago Bears. If you're in that company in the NFL this season, that's not good. That is not good at all. The game flow for Javonte should be good either way. Denver has a good chance of staying in the game because Green Bay has been struggling offensively. Jordan Love has looked like a rookie quarterback. Go figure. Who would have thought that he wouldn't look like a seasoned veteran going into his first year of starting in the NFL? So the running game is less likely to be phased out for Denver overall. I think you're going to see them want to control the pace of play, control time of possession, and just not allow Green Bay to try to get anything going offensively because they haven't been able to. And Denver's not going to want to give them that opportunity because their defense is so bad, historically bad, Denver's defense is. But if Green Bay does get up big, they have been prone to allowing dump-offs to the running backs this offseason. That is the caveat to having Joe Barry as your defensive coordinator in a Fangio-style defense where you don't want to allow the big plays, so you allow those dump-offs to running backs. You allow those checkdowns and those slot receivers to get a lot more production. And overall, Javonte should probably save his day, even if he's not good as a runner, with 4 or 5 catches. I don't think that's bold when you're looking at this matchup. Javonte has a decent floor with upside. He can get his first touchdown of the season. We're very confident in that. And in a bye week filled with lots of running backs that you're usually starting in Week 7, he's absolutely worth a start.
At the beginning of the season, the popular take was, okay, fade all terrible offenses and all players on all terrible offenses. So with that came the Arizona Cardinals, and pretty much every single player on the Cardinals was faded. Marquise Brown was not going super high in fantasy drafts. James Conner was not going near as high as he should have. And you had also guys like Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson, not even on people's radar. Each of them has had good games this year. And so now looking at the Arizona Cardinals, we're going to have Marquise Brown here as a must-start this week. With James Conner hurt, so he's not playing, and Josh Dobbs also hasn't really been playing as good as he was to start the season. A lot of people are going to start being out on Marquise Brown, but we think that this week he actually is going to be a must-start. We're going to say confidently that he's going to get elite volume this week. And how do we know this? Because looking at his game log, the last 3 games, 11 targets, 10 targets, 10 targets. He is a target hog. He is the Michael Pittman of that offense. They are not the same player, but they get the same target volume. And when you have in a PPR league somebody who gets those kinds of targets, even when he does only bring in 4 of them, in the last 2 weeks, it happened twice, he still can score fantasy points. I mean, and you're looking at the week before this one, he had 10 targets. He had 4 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. And do the math. He's still scoring 16, 18 points there. So we're comfortable with Marquise Brown because the matchup this week is elite. The Seahawks are dead last in the league. They've given up the most points to wide receivers this year. That's the best matchup a wide receiver can have. Like statistically, you're talking about the best matchup a wide receiver can have. He's a talented player. He's getting great volume. And this is a great matchup. So we think a combination of those things is going to make Marquise Brown somebody that you're going to want to start for your fantasy team for sure this week if you have him in a flex spot.
Yeah, and Amari Cooper is another wide receiver, a very good wide receiver who's stuck in a worse situation than we expected this year because Deshaun Watson has been in and out with that shoulder injury, obviously missing the last 2 games. Cooper's week 6, though, is why you should try to start talented players when you can, and Amari Cooper is absolutely that. PJ Walker was PJ Walker. He was what everyone expected, but Cooper was still very, very good with the opportunities that he was given. 8 targets, 4 receptions for 108 receiving yards. Is he going to consistently get more than 25 yards per catch? Probably not for the rest of the year.
No.
But when you're looking at the matchup this week against our beloved Indianapolis Colts, there is no reason you shouldn't be starting Amari Cooper this week. The Colts were better in week 6 against wide receivers playing Jacksonville, mostly because the Jags got up big early and they didn't even need to throw. They were just trying to run the clock out to win the game with ETN. And they're still exploitable in their secondary. Easily, but by far. They're one of the most exploitable secondaries in the NFL. They're in the same company as the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions with the amount of receiving yards per game and overall points that they've allowed to wide receivers this season. Amari Cooper has enough volume and enough talent that you really need to keep starting him. Watson or no Watson. You've got to start your stud in this situation, and that's especially true against the Colts.
Yeah, absolutely. Geno Smith's going to be next on this list. It's really been a struggle for Geno this year. After last year, he was very, very good in fantasy football. This year, he's the QB 22 on the season. When you look at his game log here, he has had really only 1 game with multiple touchdowns. And that's what the volatility stems from. I mean, we know touchdowns are volatile. Geno Smith not known for a lot of touchdowns this year. It's actually bled into the receiver production as well. Yeah. But this might be the matchup to get Geno back on track. The Cardinals have allowed the 5th most points to quarterbacks this season. And in a week where you're missing Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, and now Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, Jimmy Garoppolo, if you were starting him, you might be looking around somebody. I mean, for somebody, the quarterback market right now, like the market at every other position, is not good. And so when you're looking for viable options to plug in, Geno's still that guy. Geno is still that guy. This is going to be a good matchup for him, and he should be a good fill-in for Week 7, especially if you're missing quarterbacks to either A, injuries, or B, bye weeks. We've come to that time where you're going to be needing fillers for each position. For quarterback, Geno's a good one this week.
Yeah, and Aaron Jones is going to be another guy that we're excited about starting this week if he is healthy. The hope is that Jones is ready to go after their bye week. He's just too good to not start anytime he's healthy and ready to go. I get that when he was healthy a couple weeks ago and was a go against the Detroit Lions, everyone started him and he didn't work out. It's because he wasn't 100%. That's why he's missed another game and had to go not healthy into the bye week. But when you look at his healthy week in week 1, for example, granted it is a small sample size, but this was the Aaron Jones that we know and love. 9 carries, 41 yards, a touchdown, 2 receptions, 86 yards, a touchdown. He has that big playability. He has that receiving upside. He's still very explosive, and he's got a great matchup. We just talked about the other side of the ball for Denver playing Green Bay's defense. Green Bay debatably not even debatably, objectively has a better matchup against Denver's defense, which is as bad against everything for running backs. Most rushing yards allowed, second most rushing touchdowns, second most catches given up to running backs, second most receiving yards to running backs, and second most in receiving touchdowns to running backs. I mean, there's an argument to be made here that you should be starting A.J. Dillon. If you are that desperate and you are still crazy enough to be rostering A.J. Dillon, if you have to start A.J. Dillon this week, I'm honestly feeling kind of good about it, that he'll be lucky enough to get a touchdown. Denver seems to want to allow it all the time. If Jones can't go, that's kind of what we're counting on. If you're an owner of Aaron Jones and you have to pick up A.J. Dillon, he's probably available on waivers here and there. Go ahead and go for it, man. I mean, this is what we're depending on in Week 7. There have been so many catastrophic injuries for us in fantasy football. You're becoming dependent on these backup caliber running backs. And when you're looking at A.J. Dillon's last game against the Las Vegas Raiders, 20 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. It was his best game of the season against a lackluster defense in the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're playing an even worse defense this week against the Denver Broncos.
Rhamondre Stevenson is going to be the next guy on this list. He looked good Sunday, actually, which is great because we had him as a bye, and we said he was going to play at least good for some parts of the season. And he did. The Patriots offense still didn't look good at all. But at least they weren't comatose. That's a step up. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's especially nice to see that he got 6 targets last week. And the Patriots, I would imagine, because Bill Belichick's a pretty good coach, should be trying to get Rhamondre the ball a little bit more and in space, because it's really been the only thing that's worked for them.
Bill's not a good coach. They should fire him. What are you talking about, man?
That's true.
He's only won 6 Super Bowls.
That's true. He doesn't really have a proven track record.
No.
Rhamondre is their best playmaker. And that's not saying a lot. It's really not saying a lot. But he is their best playmaker. So the Bills on the schedule, a lot of people are going to look at the Bills and just be like, box score watchers, but this is a terrible matchup. It's the Bills defense, blah, blah, blah. And we know it looks intimidating. But as good as they've been defensively, they've actually allowed the 9th most points to running backs this year. And they've actually allowed the 8th most receptions to running back this year, which to me kind of screams Rhamondre Stevenson productive game. I don't know about you. Hopefully the Patriots will continue to realize that Stevenson catching the ball is actually their best way to move the ball down the field. Again, he's looked good when he's gotten the ball this season. And I don't think Rhamondre is the problem. I think the problem is in a lot of other things in New England. But if they continue to realize and continue to feed Rhamondre the ball, they continue to realize that he is the way to get the ball down the field, I think they're going to do it more. I'm counting on Rhamondre this week to get it done. I'm comfortable starting him for sure.
Yeah. Every single year, it's a Tyler Lockett tradition. He has a couple bad games at the beginning of the season. People start to worry about him. And then he goes and he has a good one. Honestly, you can have your own opinion on Tyler Lockett for the rest of the season. What's he going to look like at the end of the year? Is JSN going to take a step up? We have our own thoughts about that. We have our own opinions. We honestly respect everyone's opinion on that matter. But when you're talking about this week, going into week 7, what is Tyler Lockett's matchup? Playing the Cardinals, who have given up the 7th highest points to opposing wide receivers among the Philadelphia Eagles and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those are the defenses that they're close to with the fantasy points they've allowed. That's good company for Tyler Lockett. He, I think, is poised to have a really nice game. But mostly this is just who Tyler Lockett is. We believe in him as a talent. We believe in him as a wide receiver playing in a very explosive offense. He's going to go up and down throughout the season. You just have to keep trusting him through the down weeks because the good weeks will come. And this is a week where we're predicting that he'll have a good one. You're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals matchup in honestly an ugly game where Seattle didn't even score many points, and it wasn't ideal weather. He still had 8 targets for 6 receptions and 94 yards, put up a nice 15 points for you fantasy owners. Maybe he wasn't winning you the week, but he wasn't losing you the week. And we're predicting this week that Tyler Lockett has the upside, the chance to win you your week.
All right, do us a huge favor. That's all of our starts for this week. So drop a like on the video if you enjoyed this video, and it really, really helps us out. And make sure you're also subscribed to the channel. We've got fantasy football content coming out all season. Thank you guys so much for watching, supporting the channel. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see you later.